Well, if we look out in this crowd here, you're all a bunch of failures. So am I. I look in the mirror. I'm a failure. Michael Jordan missed more shots than he made. Steve Jobs was thrown out of Apple at one point in time because he was a failure. Everybody fails. The only way you don't fail is if you sit like a slug, like this.
Don't do anything, right?
But if you're doing something, you're going to fail at it. The key is, what do you do next?
Welcome to the In Factor, conversations about how great entrepreneurs started, stumbled, and succeeded. I'm Rebecca White, and today we are recording from the main stage of the Collegiate Entrepreneurs Organization International Conference. CEO is the premier organization for student entrepreneurs from around the world. I'm talking with Mike DeLazzer, co-founder of Redbox and serial entrepreneur in the automated retail space, about the challenges and rewards of entrepreneurship. During our conversation, we dive into the importance of hard work, building relationships, and staying persistent even in the face of failure. I hope you enjoy this episode. Good morning, everyone.
How you doing?
So, Mike and I are excited to be here. I had the chance to meet a lot of you a few days ago, but this is the first time, maybe some of you met Mike last night, but maybe this is the first time you get to hear a little bit more about his story. So as Ryan said, I'm the host of In Factor podcast. So we're doing an In Factor Live today, which is really fun. So we're recording this. We're going to give you a chance to ask. I'm going to ask a few questions. We're going to give you a chance to ask some questions. Our guest today is somebody I met several years ago when we had the chance to bring him to our university. And I love his story. He's an amazing storyteller. He's got a lot of stories, too.
Some of it's true.
And some of it's true. That's right. But like me, he's been doing this for a while. So as you get a little older, you accumulate a lot of stories. So part of it is just sticking around long enough, right, Mike?
Yeah, and if you get old enough, you start forgetting the stories or that you told before. So.
But Mike has been, he's got a really interesting career because he's combined a lot of different elements. And I mentioned the other day when I talked about my book that a lot of it's about learning. Entrepreneurship is about testing hypotheses. And so Mike has tested a number of hypotheses over the years, probably way more than I could even count. And many of them have been successful, and a lot of it his first company was in the custom electronic and mechanical devices space, which is very related to what he continues to do today. He then was the co-founder of Redbox, which you're familiar with. It had a different name. Get a Movie, I think it was.
That's what we called it.
That's what they called it, yeah. And then when they partnered with McDonald's, which is a fantastic story I hope he tells today. In 2005, they created Redbox. And of course, that grew to an incredibly successful company, which I think you told me went public this week.
I think a couple days ago.
Yeah, a couple days ago. So interesting story there. He's been inducted into the Chicago Entrepreneur Hall of Fame. Great stories around that as well. And now he's working in the space of automated retail solutions for other products besides movies. And I asked him yesterday, is automated retail solutions vending machines, which is what I've always called them. And basically, I'm sure there's a lot more to it, but it gives you the chance to take control, right? Of getting what you want, where you want it. So Mike, thank you for joining us today. I'm really excited to have you here, and I'm really excited to be doing a live In Factor at the 38th Global Conference of the Collegiate Entrepreneurs Organization. And a big shout out to James Zabrowski and Giles Hertz and their team and everything they've done. So, Mike, let's dig right in. Your talk today had in the title something about failure. So I know we want to get to that.
Yep.
But if you don't mind, I'd like to go back a little bit and ask you, because, when you were sitting in school or about this age, were you thinking about being an entrepreneur? What was kind of in your mind, and where were you headed at that time?
Yeah, I think a lot of times, I think entrepreneurs are somewhat born, but also developed. I I think if you look out in the crowd and put their hands up, how many of you guys are prom queens or prom kings, or the favored son, or come from a stable background, family-wise? So none of those things I was. And I think a lot of times entrepreneurs have a chip on their shoulder. They want to prove something to other people, to people that said, hey, you're not worth it, and to say, yeah, I am worth it. I can do stuff. I can make a difference. And I think the best entrepreneurs I've met have had some of the worst upbringing. So,
Sometimes we can't listen to all the other people, right?
Yeah, and that's one thing that it helps when no one's ever, they're not always saying you're you're the best or whatever, because when you're an entrepreneur, you're not getting that feedback. So it's very easy to say, yeah, so what else is new? I've heard this before. I've heard the naysayers, and I don't really care because, I've heard it my whole life. So I'm just going to keep on doing what I'm doing.
Yeah. So how did you start your first company, Codel Corporation? Tell us about that.
So I owned part of an importing company in Illinois, and been there for 10, 12 years, and just got tired of doing it for somebody else. And the ownership was older and older than me now. So it was like, I'm killing myself for these people, making the money, and they're just saying thanks. So I felt like, an indentured servant. So I decided to, because I was doing all the work, sourcing of product in Asia and the development of the sales network in the U.S., and decided to start my own company. And when I did, all the salesmen quit the other company, and all the agents quit the other company as well, because
they all came with you.
Yeah, because they realized that there was nothing when I wasn't there, because I was the only face of the company they had known. So it was pretty easy to get moving.
Yeah. And how many years did you run that company?
It's actually still running, but it's kind of, it's like if I have an idea that I want to have manufactured in China, I'll send the specs to my agent, and he'll find a factory that can build it, and then we develop something. But I ran that, from 1996 to 2001, we started to mess around with the DVD Kiosk Concept.
And where did that idea come from?
I keep saying my story is like a Forrest Gump story, but it's pretty much true. So we were making a custom speaker for a company in California, and they liked the way it was going, and they wanted to talk to us about the second version of that product. And they happened to be, my company was in Illinois, so they were doing a show in Chicago, and they wanted to come and talk to us. And it was like early Monday morning, like 8 o'clock in the morning. So for them, it was really early. And the two owners came, but they brought along their sales guy. And the sales guy was wired from the get-go. And it wasn't because he had too much coffee. He was way, way out there. And every time we would get on track talking about the next product, and he would come up and say something crazy. And I was like, I'd laugh, and then we'd go on to... And then he happened to be sitting next to me, and he grabbed me by the arm, and he said, "You should be in the DVD rental business." And I broke out laughing, and I said, "Okay, I'll bite." I go, "Why should I be I run an importing company. Why should I be in the DVD rental business?" And he goes, "I don't know." And he just moves on, and I'm like, holy crap, what is that about? But, so I have the kind of mind that, I don't sleep well. I'm up a lot during the night, and 4:30 in the morning is my go-to time. I'm up usually. So all night long, I keep hearing this maniac say I should be in the DVD rental business, and trying to contemplate exactly what that means. It's like either the voice of a cokehead or the voice of God, and I wasn't sure which. So it was the weekend, so my son came back from college, and and this kind of rolls into the whole how we got started, but we're sitting in a line at Blockbuster, and there's 2 high school kids screwing around behind the counter, and the line is 20 people long, and I'm a pretty hot-headed Italian, short-tempered guy, so after 10 minutes, I just screamed as loud as I could, "Help! I'm trapped in Blockbuster!" And everybody in line laughed. Oh, funny. And then out of nowhere comes some other teenager with a manager badge saying, "Sorry for the wait." And he walks away, which enraged me even more. And I said, "Oh, I can't help you. I can only say I'm sorry." I said, "Somebody should put you out of business." And I said, "I'm going to put you out of business." And then everybody in line that was laughing 2 minutes earlier took 3 steps the other direction. They're like, "This guy's losing it." My son, who's totally opposite of me, while I'm screaming, my son's like this, "Take it easy, Dad, take it easy."
Ryan was talking about how to get to the front of the line. That's another way, isn't it?
Yeah, he wouldn't get in front of me. There's no way. It would be like, "Hey, dude, get up 10 minutes early. I got here on time. Get your butt back in the back of the line." But that's me.
So you came up, you had poor customer service, standing in line. The guy had planted that seed in your head. It's kind of like, in my book when I talk about recognizing opportunities.
Yeah, you see it.
You start to see it, right? It starts to crystallize.
Yes, but the original idea was not a machine. It was a little kiosk, that we put in, and we figured out the only people that had DVD players, and you guys everybody has DVD players, but the only people that had them were people that had high-end computers, the road warriors that were traveling all over the country selling, and they had DVD, player in the computer, and we figured, hey, we'll put these in airports, and then when these guys get on an airplane, because there weren't movies back then and anything else, they could watch a movie and drop it off at another location at another airport. So my partner and I work on this idea for a month, and we're fleshing out the kiosk operation and all that stuff. And I had to go for my importing business to San Jose to visit a customer. And on the way back, I stopped at the airport to go home, and they said, "Yeah, your plane's only 4 hours late." And again, I'm very, very impatient. So I'm like a caged animal in the airport, and I'm walking back and forth in the airport. And all of a sudden, I see this kiosk in front of me, and it's a kiosk renting DVDs. It's a company called In Motion. They're still in business, but they do accessories now. But I was like, somebody stole my idea. So I called my partner back in Chicago. I said, "Hey, yeah, somebody's already got 10 locations, and they're growing, and we're toast. We move on to the next idea." So since I had 4 hours, I was just going to see how much money these guys, were making with my brilliant idea. So I took a chair and sat across the aisle from where they had this thing, and I sat there for 4 hours watching these guys, try to do business. And in 4 hours, they had 3 customers, and I was like,
Thank
God I didn't. This is a killer. I would have gone bankrupt in 10 minutes. But I happened to be sitting next to an ATM machine, and this is where the C comes in, okay?
Yep.
I'm looking at this guy losing his butt, with no business, and I'm next to an ATM machine where there's a steady line of people coming through, and there's absolutely nobody ticked off that the machine's not moving fast enough or whatever. The machine's doing what it's supposed to do, and maybe someone's a little upset. It takes a guy a little longer to do it, but it's there. And I'm looking like this, ATM, kiosk, ATM, kiosk, and I go, it's a machine. The only way this works is it's got to be a machine. So fly back home. First thing in the morning, I get in the office, and I tell my partner, Franz, I go, it's a machine. And he goes, what's a machine? I go, it's a machine. He goes, what are you talking about? I go, the DVD thing. It's got to be a machine. And he's like, you're right. It's got to be a machine. So he and we had this whiteboard in our office, and we started writing down everything that the machine had to do and how it would do it. And he's a mechanical engineer, and we would steal a pen from each other and write stuff down. And in a half literally in a half hour, we designed Redbox. From just saying it's a machine to the way it works, how it connects to the world and everything else. So
love it. So that you connected the dots, which,
right.
That's what entrepreneurs do. They recognize opportunities.
Yep.
A lot of other people could have been sitting there and they would have said, oh, I'm going to go to the bar and have a drink. I'm going to do something else.
We did that too, but still.
But you were curious, which, is also, I think, a trait of a lot of entrepreneurs. So you were curious.
And the other nutty part about it is like a Forrest Gump story. So part of my electronics, we had this product line that we were making these flat panel speakers. You could hang them on walls, and you couldn't tell they were speakers. You could put them anything you want on them. And we went to the Consumer Electronics Show in Vegas and won an award for innovation there. And on the way back, the plane is canceled again. So now I'm at the airport with my partner, and the airline's looking for somebody to give up their seats. And we're already screwed anyway. So we gave up our seats, and they gave us 2 tickets anywhere in the world. Now, we had no money in the company to do anything, but we did know that there was a company making some robotics in Italy. And like a week later, 9/11 hit, and everything shut down. So because the tickets were had to be positive space, you could So I said, let's go to Italy, and everybody goes, are you crazy? We just had 9/11. I go, this is the safest time in the world to be flying. The place is going to be armed to the teeth. So we went to Italy and bought our first couple of machines.
Yeah.
And then started tinkering around from there.
Yeah. So again, I keep bringing up this theory of see, do, repeat, but you saw that and you started to take action immediately. And some people call it serendipity, but you were prepared. You were already thinking about these things. They were coming together. But that whole process of getting this to work, because I know a little bit about the story, wasn't easy, was it? And there were a lot of things along the way that you had to deal with.
Yeah, I mean, so we developed our own machine because the Italian machine was crummy. I'm Italian, so I could say Italians are really good with pasta, but not so great with technology. But so this is part of the Forrest Gump story, is that we had these machines from Italy out in a place, several grocery stores in Chicago, and we got an article written, Crane's Chicago Business, on us, and somebody knocks on my door, and the guy says, I'm with a company called Selectron. Selectron's the biggest subcontractor in the world, and this division in North Carolina just lost our biggest customer. It's a telecom company, and we built some robotic device for them, and we're looking for something to fill the factory because it's this 500,000 square foot factory. And the guy says, I like what you're doing. I go, we do too. So we talked, and the guy offered to do like $500,000 worth of engineering for $50,000.
Nice.
Which is a deal. But the deal was that if we ever made a kiosk, they had to make it. So that was their hook.
Okay.
And I was more than happy to give them the hook because I didn't have the money. So again, a guy shows up out of nowhere and says, I want to do this. So we start building this machine, and it looks way different than the Redbox machine. It's blue and square and whatever, and it was big. It was like held 900 DVDs, and a couple months go by, and there's another knock on the door, and it's some guy from McDonald's Ventures. Now, we're in Chicago. McDonald's is 3 miles from where we are. And this guy comes in and he says, I've traveled all over the world because we have this DVD rental company we were trying to start. Traveled all over the world, and I can't find the right product, the right technology. And I said, well, I think we have the right technology. And he says, well, that's what everyone says. And I said, yeah, I really don't care what you think. And the guy kind of looked at me like, that's not much of a sales sales tool. So, but he went back and started looking at our machine and quickly was going, I've never seen this. What's that? I've never seen this. And within 3 minutes, he was out in the parking lot making a phone call and the next day brought in the president of McDonald Ventures, and we started talking about developing the business, their interest in it. But they were like, the machine has to have 500 DVDs, not 900, like your machine. It's too large. And I said, no, 900 is the right number. And they're like, we're McDonald's. We've got all these marketing geniuses that do whatever. And it's got to be 500. So they were given an edict by corporate that they had to have certain product in the field within 15 weeks. So they were giving us 8 weeks to redesign from ground up a new product. And, we worked like crazy to get it done. And in 8 weeks, we had the Redbox unit, but it didn't work. So we all went out to the manufacturing facility, and they wanted to see if the thing worked. And when we turned it on, it just sat there like a refrigerator. And they said, well, it looks really nice. The factory is really nice, but we have to have product in another 10 weeks, or 10 or 12 weeks. And we can't go with you. We're going to go with an existing guy who's been building stuff for us already. That's not great, but it's there. And so I pretty much grabbed the guy by his lapel and said, I killed myself for this for the last 8 weeks. All these people did all this work. You owe me one more day. I said, I want you to back up your flight one more day, and by tomorrow this will be working. And the guy goes, okay. So when he left, everybody started trembling in fear because we all knew there's no way it was going to happen. It's just not possible. And, so we decided to figure out how we would get all these complex drivers to communicate. The hardware worked. It's just the software was glitchy and, never really did what it was supposed to do. And we spent the whole night basically writing new code. And we did. So you guys would think this is like, every day, turn on your phone and show it, hey, I'm talking to a guy in India. Well, back then, there was no Skype. There was no anything. So we did something called a VPN, which we hooked a camera up, and a bunch of coders in India were looking at our machine, and every time it stopped doing something, and we're like, oh, I think I know where that code is, and they would write a fix. So all night long, we fix. Nothing happens. So finally, the McDonald guy shows up and says, well, and I look at my partner Franz, and he's like, we're going down. So I said, you know what, I could use some coffee, because at this point, I was up for 36 straight hours. So they agreed, we had some coffee, and I go to Franz, get the new drivers in there right away. So we came back after about a half hour and rebooted the machine, and all of a sudden the machine started. If you've never seen the inside of a Redbox machine, it's a bunch of platters, like 9 platters that spin around to access what movie, what level. And all of a sudden the thing starts to turn, which it had never, ever, ever done before. And I said, holy shit! And which inspired no confidence in our customer, but this thing does its routine and then stops, and the rent return sign comes on the graphic interface, and I was like, here goes nothing. So I pushed rent, and this thing then starts to fly around like you can hear. If you ever rented Redbox, you hear that noise. Well, that's the platters spinning around, and this platters are spinning around, and this picker goes up, grabs the DVD, pulls it, and vends it out, and I'm looking at this thing going, unbelievable. So then I got cocky and I said, I'm going to return it. So I push return, grabs it, it puts it away, and the machine shuts off. And I'm just kind of looking at my machine going, this is cool, and kind of forgetting that there's people behind me. And when I turned around, the two guys from McDonald's were sitting there with their mouths wide open, and my partner was looking with his mouth wide open. And at that point in time, I realized everything had changed from the day before. The day before, they were in the driver's seat. I am now in the driver's seat, and I know it. So I turned on him and said, I go, you know what? You guys can do whatever you want. If you want to do business with us, fine. If you don't, that's fine too. Because you see our facility here, we can make 200 of these a week. I said, the guys you're going with can only do 50 a month. I said, and when you go out and look for money, people are going to go, that's a good idea. And money's going to come to us, and we will bury you with production, and you will be out of business in less than a year. I said, you have no other choice but to go with us. And the guy says, you're right. So we started to write the contract up.
Awesome.
So razor's edge, you could die or live, and I don't want to monopolize the conversation, but people would constantly say to me, man, you were lucky. And I said, you are 100% correct. I am lucky guy. But if I would have let those guys walk out the door the day before, not so lucky.
So failure wasn't an option at that point, right? You were going to keep going.
Well, that's a perfect analogy. You only fail when you stop doing it.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
And you look at Thomas Edison, failed 6,000 times trying to find the right filament for the light bulb. Yeah, you got to be pretty crazy to do that. I wouldn't do it, but, he just kept going, and he figured it's got to work.
Yeah, absolutely. So I love that story, and I've heard you tell that before, because I think we started out our conversation talking about failure and what are you afraid of, right? That was kind of talk about failure, because I think that's a really important part. It's something I write about in See Do Repeat, and it's really important part of the journey of being an entrepreneur, right?
Yeah, I think, if we look at it in this crowd here, you're all a bunch of failures. So am I. I look in the mirror. I'm a failure. Michael Jordan missed more shots than he made. Steve Jobs was thrown out of Apple at one point in time because he was a failure. Everybody fails. The only way you don't fail is if you sit like a slug, like this.
You don't do anything, right?
But if you're doing something, you're going to fail at it. The key is, what do you do next? And I think the biggest killer of dreams in the world is fear. The fear of looking stupid, the fear of failure, fear of what people might think of you. And, luckily for me, I didn't have Facebook or Twitter or anything else that people could, weaponize failure. Everybody can be snarky and throw bad comments at you from left and right. I don't belong to either of those. I don't care. So if everybody in this place said, saw this guy on stage, what an idiot, I wouldn't know, because I'm not in that ecosystem. I don't care. I don't care what you guys think. And that's what a good entrepreneur does. It doesn't care. And fear is part of that. If you're only afraid if you think somebody's going to judge you. And if you don't put your idea out there, then there's no chance of failure, and there's no fear.
So you told me a great story before we came in here. I think, we talked about...
I tell a lot of stories.
Well, one of the stories you told me before you came in was about, along the way, not everybody believed in a lot of things that you've done, including Redbox. So you had a great story about when you were seeking funding, right?
Yeah, that and karma. So we went out looking for money for this concept. It was more than a concept. It was an actual product. And before McDonald's showed up, we probably did 20, I would call them dog and pony shows, where here's what our machine can do, blah, blah. Every person we talked to, from New York to California to Chicago, said, you're insane. There is no way that you can dislodge Blockbuster from their preeminence in this business. They've killed every mom and pop shop, out there, and they're too big and too well entrenched. And, it was disheartening, but again, being a hot-headed Italian, at one point, this group we were presenting to, the guy was pretty adamant that I was unhinged with reality, didn't realize that this thing couldn't work, even though I explained all the metrics of why it will work. And at the end, towards the end, I touched him on the shoulder and I said, "Hey, you look like you're a pretty limber guy." And he said, "What the hell does that mean?" And I said, "Because you're going to be kicking yourself in your own ass in 2 years for passing this up." I pretty much got the bum's rush, although I'm a big guy. Nobody really gives me the bum's rush, but it was pretty much get out, get out. Funny part of karma is that 2 years, probably to the day almost, I was inducted into the Entrepreneur Hall of Fame in Chicago, and the poor bastard that had to give me my award was this guy. And so I leaned in when he gave me the award, and I said, "Hey, ready to start kicking?" and he made some disparaging remark about my lineage, but anyway, that's how stuff works. The experts that say, "Oh, this is a stupid idea." Well, I think Mark Twain said, a crank is somebody with a new idea until it succeeds.
Yeah.
And everyone else who's not in this room thinks differently. They think like, this is the world. The world is what it is. Everyone else in this room thinks about, this is what the world could be or should be, and I'm going to be part of making it what it should be.
Yeah, I love that story. And yeah. And this conference is about being an agent of change. And I think that's what entrepreneurs do, right? They transform the world through the things they do. And
everything we have, everything that exists that's not natural is started with an idea, some guy with an idea. And that's why it's important, I think, for you guys to take your ideas and write them down, speak them, because if you don't speak them, they don't become real. Napoleon Hill said, "Thoughts are things." And I was like, well, does that make sense? But yeah, it does make sense. Without the thought, it can't become a thing. And without you talking about your idea, there's no fear. And without, not caring whether there's fear, it gives you the ability to say, "Hey, I don't care. Tell me it's a bad idea, but I think I'm going to keep doing it until I believe it's a bad idea."
It's great advice. So I was really honored this morning when you told me you actually have read about half of my book already. You got it last night?
Yep, I had nothing
yesterday?
better to do. No, it was very, actually.
He got up really early this morning, right?
Yeah, I usually get up around 4:30 every morning. And believe it or not, I spend a lot of time on YouTube, and I keep going down different rat holes, like learning about gardening, learning about ancient civilizations, learning about
we do that at
geometry, and and I keep getting fed. Google keeps saying, "Oh, he's interested in math. Give him these," and then now he's interested in intermittent fasting. Give him that, So, the part of the C thing is I like to take in a ton of information. I'm ADD, and my wife says, I'm ADD. I agree with her. I'm ADD, and I need constant input. And if I don't get it, I get squirrely. So first thing in the morning, I like input, and I like to learn about things. And then, I'll see something and go, that combined with that is something that didn't exist.
Yeah.
And,
connecting the dots.
Yeah, I try to take the analogy where, like, if you're an entrepreneur, you're walking through the desert, like the Sahara Desert, and up ahead you see the wind has uncovered something, and you're pretty sure it's, it looks like a laptop computer. Hey, that's pretty cool. Further up ahead, there's something you don't quite make, sense of until you get closer, until the opportunity unveils itself. And then you go, that's new. That's new, and that's old, and the two can become something even better. So it's not like you can't go back and say, "Hey, I have a great idea." It's a program where it'll run your software on your computer, and they use these things called Windows. It's like, done. It's already been done. Or, we can vend movies out of a machine, done. But there's something new, and it's going exponentially. I mean, the ability to find something to latch onto is, you have to really be dull not to see the opportunities, because they're all around you.
Yeah, just look for them. I love that. And so now the opportunities you're looking at is the not vending, but automated retail solutions.
Yeah, vending sounds like, like a screw machine and you drop something. This is high. It's more like Amazon Go. We have an autonomous retail product. It's better than Amazon Go. Cheaper than Amazon Go.
So tell us what you're doing. What are some of the things you're working on?
My partner, Franz, and I, after we exited Redbox, we bought part of a company in Sweden called Instant Systems that was actually doing DVD for Europe. But by the time, the Europeans use credit cards way differently than we do. And by the time, we got traction, that whole DVD thing was passing. So we decided to use the software that we had and develop arms and legs for the technology to do retail. But having come from the robot world, we're like, robots, they're terrible. They work, but they break down. What doesn't break down is the human hand. So, we have these coolers, and you access it with either our app or with a credit card, and you open the door, and it's like, now you're in your refrigerator at home, and you go, I want a drink, and I want an apple, and I want this. And when you take it, all that stuff is being calculated by vision and weight load cells and saying, all right, inventory's changed, here's what's on your card, go and enjoy. But it also reports back to our back office, so people can run thousands of these machines from a terminal where a guy sits there and looks at a map of the U.S. with all the little dots on it, and all the little dots are green except this one turned red, and he can click on it and say, this is low on inventory, and he can send somebody to do inventory for it. So it's really cool. The nice thing about the business is that, unlike Redbox, if we screwed up the DVD business, we were done. We couldn't vend, gold coins or something from it. With this, it's food. We have a product that does rental of athletic equipment. We have containers that will ship product to a location that people can understand what their inventory status is in remote places. It's security for people to stop this rampant theft stuff that's going on. So it's a little bit of everything. So to screw this one up I'd really have to try hard. Which is why my partner said, don't do the speech today, because he says the only thing that could derail us is your mouth. And I was like,
Well, you're among entrepreneurs here, so we're talking the same language. But what I find interesting about this, I know these have been popular in Europe for a while, and I've had a number of students over the last 5 or 6 years who have had this same idea. But the difference is that you're able to connect the dots on a lot of experience with the idea and take action, which is the do part of everything. I mean, it's about execution, right? And it's about keeping going.
Yeah, we baked this cake already, so it's pretty easy to rebake it in a different flavor. But and
so you got to do. You got to take action.
You got to do, and you got to ask. Like they said, ask for help.
Yeah.
When we were first doing Redbox, one of the guys that was doing legal work for us for free, he kept going, I've never seen anybody like you. He goes, you are the king of free. He goes, you get so many people that are in business giving you free things. And I said, I ask.
Yeah. You don't ask, you don't get, right?
Yeah. I mean, everybody's human, even businessmen.
Yeah.
And they want to be able to help, especially if, they, like for me, the reason I come here is not for any other reason other than when I was doing this, there was nobody. There was no place for me to go. Nobody, no safe harbor, no safe haven, no resource. And so the only thing I could do is read books and figure out on my own where to go. But you guys got such a leg up on where I was because there's so much going on. And this ecosystem is so vibrant and growing that, it's cool. It's cool to be an entrepreneur nowadays.
Yeah, it is. And the organizations like this didn't exist when I was young, too. So it's really great to see this. And, I think I'd love to open up maybe for a few questions from the audience. We've kind of gone through some of your background, but I know there's probably some questions out there. So I don't know do we have a mic that's going around, or do we just, we got a mic?
Mic stand.
Over there.
Oh, mic stand right here. Yes, thank you, Ryan. So if you have a question, feel free to come up and ask Mike.
Have no fear.
Yeah, that's right.
Hi. Hi. Thank you so much for presenting. My question is, what would you tell people who don't know whether they should continue pursuing their idea or not? Like, when do you know that an idea is like a failure or like it's time to move on to something else?
That's a hard one to answer because most people will tell you it's a bad idea from the start. So you're already starting out with a negative headwinds. And so in my case, we saw that somebody else had already hit the space that we were looking at, and I could have walked away and said, done. But, it's like everything. You can put stuff on a back burner and still let it churn. But eventually, if it doesn't really catch fire with you at some point, you kind of got to decide what you really want to do. But if it's a good idea, you might find the application, a different application for the good idea. And so it's a personal thing. I don't know. I mean, there were probably a dozen people working on DVD kiosks when I was. In fact, every one of them has come up to me and said, "You stole my idea." And I'm like, yeah, I don't know about that. Even people who never even did anything, they would say, "Oh, you stole my idea." And I said, "Well, did you ransom your home and and give everything away for years to make it happen?" No. And I go, there's the difference. So I just say persevere, and eventually you'll know. Either you'll lose interest or you'll find something that's even more interesting.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Okay.
First and foremost, thank you for presenting. Really appreciate your time and getting your wisdom and knowledge. My question is, if you could go back in time and you could talk to your younger self, what advice would you give to yourself?
Do it sooner. Do it sooner and put your whole heart into it. I was dabbling in entrepreneurship at a very early age. I was in college, and I happened to run across a guy that owned apartment buildings, and I was on the football team at the university, and he was a booster, and he said, "Hey, you want to make some extra money?" I said, "Sure." And I would paint apartments for him. But he said, "I'll give you $100 for an apartment, but you got to buy the paint." And I was like, I really don't like painting. So I found some other guys on the football team that would paint it for $20 each. The paint cost me another $20, and I kept the balance. So early on, I realized, hey, it's much better when somebody else is doing the work and you're collecting the money. So I would say do it sooner, and in some cases, at some point in time with your idea, you have to be like Cortez. When Cortez came to the New World to conquer the Aztecs, one of the first things he did was burn all his ships that brought them there. And obviously, most of the people that were with him thought he was insane, but he said, there's no way home. Forward. That's the only way. And at some point in time, you got to be like Cortez and go, okay, I'm burning the bridge.
And one last question. What do you see in the top 5% of elite performers that are willing to do what 95% of people aren't willing to do?
Not give up. Not give up, not care basically not care what people think. and their entrepreneurs tend to be, I kind of like to think I'm a people person, but, I've been told otherwise. But I know for a fact that I'm a result guy, I'm a goal guy. It's, I'll run you over to get to my goal. And that's kind of the way you got to be. You got to be a little ruthless.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hey there. You said the only thing that will derail us is your mouth. I thought that was really funny, and I'm running a very small team, but I run into this problem all the time. I realize there's so much weight to the vision that you're projecting, and I don't know how you bump into that equation in your life, but how do you set up some guardrails for like what you say so that you can be more efficient with every word you speak to your team? That's my question.
Yeah, I don't care.
You don't care?
I don't care. I mean, and I've proven that time and time again, where I don't have to worry about, my son, when he was in college, somebody wrote a book called Shit My Father Says. And this guy who knew me goes, "Hey, did your dad write this book?" And he goes, "Yeah, he should have." But part of being an entrepreneur is not really caring what people say. And I say a lot of things. Some things aren't great, but others, I think are okay. But you can't, that's part of fear, I think. If you worry about derailing stuff, because of your mouth, but your mouth is also the thing that gets you where you want to go.
Sure.
So it's a difficult question. And my wife, she wished I would check the, I have a really quick knee-jerk reaction for most comments. Some are funny. Some are like, "Oh my God, I can't believe you said that." But it is what it is. So I'm not changing.
Do you mind if I ask a bit more of a refined question, then?
Sure.
What are your processes for leadership? Like, how do you keep the project in line?
So the way I like to form a team, let's say, is I'm like Dr. Frankenstein. You need one head, you need two arms, two legs, a body. You don't need two heads or four arms. So I try to find people that are good at doing what I'm not good at, and it's very easy because I'm not good at a lot of stuff. But there are some things I'm good at, and recognizing what your strengths are and the strengths of others is an important part of team building. Otherwise, you just butt heads with people because they have this is my idea, this is my opinion. Well, and the other part of it is, I think leaders aren't kings, You can't go into a situation with a team and go, "Damn it, we're doing this." Mm-hmm. So I usually go by consensus. It says in the book of Tao, they say when a true leader does something, the people go, "We did this." It's not, "I did this." So that's kind of how I approach it. And I let people have their say.
Okay.
Because they're not slaves. I mean,
no, yeah, of course.
They have a choice to go either follow you or not. And if you burn them with a blowtorch, they're not interested in following you anymore. So you got to. So
you got to keep things interesting, yeah.
Well, that's not a problem, but yeah, you got to keep things. You got to kind of see it from the other side, from their side. When I was doing this, I was in debt up to my what and had no money to spend. And part of the, talk about fear and conquering fear, but every Sunday night, every Friday afternoon, my partner and I would drink a beer because then I knew the collection calls would stop for money. Every Sunday night, I couldn't sleep at all. I would be in the fetal position because I knew I owed $250,000 that I didn't have to pay back. And I would sit there, and I couldn't tell my wife that I owed $250,000 because it would have been frying pan, divorce court, whatever. And that's lonely. So you got to check your emotions as a leader. You can't tell everybody, "Hey, we're screwed," because if they believe that, they're gone. Because most people aren't, they want a safe position in life. They're not like, yeah, I'll do this and maybe I'll burn doing it, but I'm going to do it. So.
Yeah, that last bit really hit home for me. I appreciate that. Thank you for talking.
All right.
I think it's an honor to meet you, and I just want to know, how did you get the licenses for all the movies from the multiple studios, and how did you get the contracts like at Walgreens and stuff like that?
So how did we get the contracts for the first?
Well, the licenses for like the movies, right? You have to get the licenses.
Well, at first we started to deal with a distributor called Ingram, and we bought movies through them. And as we got bigger and bigger, what happened in the early 2000s, mid-2000s, most people that got DVDs were buying the new one every week. They were buying a new one and having, now I have a library of 200 DVD movies. And it's like, you got $4,000 worth of movies and you're going to watch them once in a while. So people quickly started to go, I'm not doing that. So they stopped buying so many movies. But we kept growing. So the studios saw their sales and our rise as being the cause. So they said, no more movies. We're not giving you can't sell these guys any movies. So what we did is we had all our field service people go out to Walmart and buy every movie they had that came out. And then they went back and put little labels on them and put them in the machines. So quickly, the studios realized that Walmart was doing way more business than they'd ever done before, and we were the cause, so they told Walmart to stop selling us. And Walmart said, I think we'll just stop carrying your movies. And they were like, well, maybe maybe you can still sell to them. So it kind of wound up in a lawsuit. We settled and then did a rev share. But that's how that happened. With regards to finding locations, that's kind of an interesting story, but I don't think I'll tell it on camera. So,
Thank you so much.
Mike, I just have a couple of questions before we close. I guess if any other students have questions come up, we've got just a minute. But you've had a partner, the same partner through all these businesses, is that right?
Yeah, actually, so Codel, he was not my partner, but I ran into him at a customer, and I was like, I like this guy. He's a smart guy, and for an engineer, he's not, he's got some social skills. Let's put it that way. And I started to mess around with this flat panel speaker technology, and I needed some tech guy to help me out. And I said, hey, come with me, and I'll make you rich. Less than 5 years, I'll make you rich. And he said, okay. So he came with me, and we built a business, and he wound up with half the company and of Redbox, at least our portion of it. And then he moved on he's Austrian, so they went back to Europe to mess around with the Swedish company to do DVD development there. And now he's back here in the U.S. and actually happens to live in Marco, not too far from me, on Marco Island. And we're a good fit. The third partner of ours is Swedish, and when I was going to visit the factory for the first time, they said, hey, Christian, what's Mike like? And Christian goes, picture Franz, who is my partner, and then he says, now picture the opposite.
Well, I was going to ask you, because I've seen a lot of teams fall apart. I've seen a lot of people try to build teams. So you looked for somebody that had the skills you didn't have,
right.
Probably. Were there other things? Because it's such a challenging relationship.
Yeah,
a lot of times.
He's a very calm guy, and
so again,
I'm not a
your
calm
opposites.
guy. Right. And so I'll get in trouble, and he'll go, "It's Mike." I did a speech once and was interviewed by some television station, and happened to say I started this company to bankrupt Blockbuster, and my son, who happened to be working at Redbox at the time, calls me at 4 a.m, and he's like, "Did you give a speech yesterday?" I go, "Yeah." And he goes, "Did you say you did it to bankrupt Blockbuster?" And I said, "Yeah, it's true. You were there." And he's like, "You can't say that. I just got a call from the president of the company first thing in the morning saying, you tell your dad to stop saying that. No company would ever say that. And I'm like, nah, I'm not going to do it. So he goes back to the president and he says, hey, you've met my dad. You think I can control him? So
So you and Franz were a good team.
We're a good team, and he's very methodical, and I'm kind of out there with thoughts, ideas, energy, and I'm probably more of the sales marketing guy, and he's more of the this is what has to happen. He's the other, the perfect part of the Frankenstein,
But I would say it's pick your partners wisely, right?
It's like a wife, and same goes with funding. Nobody wants more than one wife. I mean, that's trouble. But and when you have multiple partners and multiple people with their financial interest in it, you really become a slave to their interests and not your interest. And I would highly recommend you guys bootstrap as far as you can bootstrap, because traditionally after the third round you wind up working for somebody else, your idea, their company.
Yeah.
So the longer you can prolong that, the higher your valuation can be, and the more you can retain control if that's what you want.
So I always like to end the podcast by asking if you had one piece of advice or one thing that you would want to leave with this audience, what would it be? You've already given us a lot of great stories, a lot of good advice, I think. But.
Yeah, I think go back to the fear part where, fear stops us from doing everything, from approaching somebody you might want to date or to ask for help on something or an idea or whatever. And, a lot of us think that our family is going to be the perfect sounding board for your idea, but they're usually not. I mean, you care what your parents think. Most people do. And if they come back with a negative reply, that's hard to take. So I would say don't care so much about what people think. And don't be afraid.
It's great advice. And as I mentioned to you, I think chapter 8 in my book. So if you haven't had a chance to look at it, and I know a lot of you got the free ebook, but chapter 8, that's what I talk about, fear of failure. And I think it's very common. We all have it, but we have to overcome it.
I have to say, if you haven't got the book or read the book yet, this would be the wisest choice of a couple hours that you could make as an entrepreneur, because it boils down. It's funny, I read it and I'm like, hey, I did that. Oh, that's me. Huh.
Well, you and all the entrepreneurs I've known have inspired it. So thank you for your contribution to it. And I have really enjoyed talking to you. I know that there have been a lot of great lessons in this. I know Mike will be around for a little bit before he drives back down to his beautiful home a few hours south. I'll be over here at the table afterwards. But thank you for your time. Thank you, Mike.
Thanks for having me.
Awesome.
If you enjoyed this episode and would like to learn more about entrepreneurship, we would love it if you hit that subscribe button. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of InFactor.